Hello and welcome to the Fossil Huntress podcast. I hope you guys are all doing well. Today on the show I wanted to talk about one of my favorite mammals, those brown, black, polar and panda bears in the family Ursidae. I love all the bears living in the world today. We've got 8 different species, and they're widespread, so they appear in a variety of habitats in the Northern and Southern Hemisphere, and they make a home in North America, South America, Europe, and Asia. They're considered carnivoran mammals of the family Ursidae, so they're classified as caniforms or dog-like carnivores. And had they evolved in a slightly different way, we might well have chosen them as pets instead of the dogs so many of us have in our lives. So the first bear fossils I ever got to see were from a relative of the brown and black bears, a bear dog that entered the fossil record about 20 million years ago. We found polar bear bones of fossilized polar bears that are much, much older that tell us a little bit about where they split off in the lineage, which is quite interesting. Bears are really long-lived. I have a lot of respect for them, and I think of the elderly bears as sort of the grandparents of the forest. So they live, 20 to 30 years on average in the wild. In captivity, however, there was a female polar bear who lived to be 41 years old, so they can be quite long-lived, and I wish our beautiful dogs that we have as pets could live that long as well, although they do not, but they are related. We've talked in previous episodes about what are the environmental conditions that are ideal for a plant or a tree or a mammal to become a fossil and enter the fossil record. And maybe there's, no scavengers, or there's a lack of oxygen deep in the water, a nice soft muddy bottom, or the makings of limestone or other sedimentary rocks. So there's a lot of perfect and ideal conditions that we love to see so that we can get the kind of preservation we might see at a place like Solenhofen, where it's just phenomenal and every detail's recorded. But nowhere on that big long list is ice and snow. And so it is that polar bear fossils are relatively rare. Some of them do find their way into the ocean and do get fossilized at the bottom, but many of them get buried in ice and snow, and we don't ever find them. But there was a very fortuitous find a few years ago now in Svalbard in Norway, and we've talked about that locality in a previous episode. And this particular find was, rare in and of itself, but a researcher was able to sequence the genome from this particular jaw and discover that the fossil itself is about 110 to 130,000 years old. And we're able to see when polar bears split away from their common ancestor, from the brown bears. Fortunately for us, that bit of jaw and a single canine tooth made its way into the hands of molecular biologist Charlotte Lindquist at the University of Oslo. She's also associated with the Natural History Museum, which is why she was chosen, and she's now over at the University of Buffalo in New York. So she drilled into that jaw and was able to collect some intact mitochondrial DNA, so very Jurassic Park. So mitochondria, those are the little organelles found in animal cells, and they have their own DNA and can replicate. And because there are many mitochondria per cell, mitochondrial DNA is easier to find in fossils than nuclear DNA. Because the quality of this mitochondrial DNA was quite good, she wondered if it could illuminate the evolutionary history of how and when polar bears diverged off from brown bears. And to find out, she went over to Pennsylvania State University and hooked up with another very good molecular biologist researcher, Stephen Schuster. And with a team of their colleagues, they sequenced this genetic material, and she collected it and was very successful. So it's the oldest mammalian mitochondrial genome sequence to date, and it's about twice the age of the oldest mammoth genome, which dates to about 65,000 years old. So what did we learn from all her good work in sequencing and the good folks at Pennsylvania State? That we learned that polar bears are, evolutionarily speaking, a very young species that split off from the brown bear lineage about 150,000 years ago. So they evolved very rapidly during the late Pleistocene, and they've adapted to the cold far north, where they can eat an abundance of seals and outcompete the other predators. I'm very glad they're on the planet today. I know that their ecosystems are changing rather rapidly. We're losing our polar ice, and they're swimming from location to location instead of just walking across the ice. And I hope their ability to adapt carries on, because I love them on this planet. I did up a little video on the different bears, pandas and black bears and brown bears. If you go to fossilhuntress.com and then click YouTube, there's some lovely footage of some playful bears and some of their cubs that you might enjoy. Anyway, I hope you guys are having a good night, and thanks for listening.